Welcome to Principles of Marketing. We will be looking at Chapter 6, Consumer Decision Making. Chapter 6, Learning Outcomes, include explaining why the marketing manager should understand consumer behavior, analyzing the components of the consumer decision making process, explaining the consumer's post purchase evaluation process, identifying the types of consumer buying decisions, and discussing the significance of consumer involvement, describing how marketers are reconceptualizing the consumer decision making process, identifying and understanding the cultural factors that affect consumer buying decisions, identifying and understanding the social factors that affect consumer buying decisions, identifying and understanding the individual factors that affect consumer buying decisions, and identifying and understanding the psychological factors that affect the consumer buying decision. Make sure you read all the chapter and review all modular content. Let's get started. The first stage in the consumer decision-making process is need recognition. Need recognition is the result of imbalance between actual and desired states. The imbalance arouses and activates the consumer decision-making process. A want is the recognition of unfilled need and a product that will satisfy it. Wants can be viewed in terms of four goals: economizing, sustaining, treating, and rewarding. The specific goal that a consumer is trying to fulfill influences how he or she will allocate money, time, and effort. Need recognition is triggered when a consumer is exposed to either internal or external stimuli, which is any unit of input affecting one or more of the five senses: sight, smell, taste, touch, and hearing. The internal stimuli are occurrences you experience, such as hunger or thirst. External stimuli are influenced from outside sources, which can include YouTube or Google. The imbalance between actual and desired state is sometimes referred to as the want-got gap. There is a difference between what a customer has and what he or she would like to have. The gap must be large enough to drive the consumer to do something. A marketer manager's objective is to get the consumer to recognize this want-got gap. After getting information and constructing an evoked set of alternative products, the consumer is ready to make a decision. A consumer will use information stored to develop a set criteria. The environment, internal information, and external information help consumers evaluate and compare alternatives. One way to begin narrowing the number of choices in the evoked set is to pick a product's attributes and then exclude all products in that set that do not have that attribute. If new brands are added to an evoked set, the consumer evaluation of the existing brands in that set changes. As a result, certain brands in the original set may become more desirable. The piecemeal process is the evaluation that is made by examining alternatives, advantages, and disadvantages along important product attributes. A different way consumers can evaluate a product is according to categorization process. Typically, these categories are associated with some degree of liking or disliking. So when a consumer relies on categorization process, a product evaluation depends on the particular category to which it's perceived as belonging. Given this, companies need to understand whether consumers are using categories that evoke the desired evaluation. How a product is categorized can strongly influence consumer demand. Brand extension is one way companies are able to take advantage of product categories. Brand extension is where a well-known and respected brand from one product category is extended to another product category. Another factor that can influence the evaluation process is exposure to the price of the product and or service. The consumer will ultimately have to decide whether to buy or not to buy. Specifically, they're looking at whether to buy, when to buy, what to buy, where to buy, and how they should pay. Complex and expensive items are typically purchased only after the consumer has collected large amounts of information. This would include buying a new home or buying a car. Consumers will make partially planned purchases when they know the product category they want to buy, but wait until they get to the store or go online to choose a specific style or brand. This would include shirts, pants, lamps. Unplanned purchases are products that people buy on impulse. 75% of the adults in the United States have made an impulse purchase. According to new research, the percentage of people who make impulse purchase varies by product category. For apparel, it's about 19%. Gift cards, 44%. Home decor is 40%. Beauty products is 38%. And home improvements is 35%. Psychological ownership is important to marketers because when consumers feel a sense of ownership of a product, they are willing to pay more for it and are more likely to tell other consumers about it. Consumers develop this kind of relationship with products when they're able to control it, when they invest themselves in it, or when they have come to know it intimately. All consumer buying decisions generally fall along a continuum of three broad categories: routine, response, behavior, and limited decision making and extensive decision making. Goods and services in these three categories can best be described in terms of five factors: level of consumer involvement, length of time to develop a decision, cost of goods or services, degree of information search, a number of alternatives to consider. The level of consumer involvement is perhaps the most significant determinant in classifying buying decisions. Involvement is the amount of time and effort a buyer invests in the search, evaluation, and decision processes of consumer behavior. Frequently purchased low-cost goods and services are generally associated with routine response behavior. These goods and services can be called low-involvement products because consumers spend little time on research and decision before making the purchase. Consumers engaged in routine response behavior normally do not experience need recognition until they are exposed to advertisements or they see the product displayed on the store. Limited decision making typically occurs when a consumer has previously purchased the product but is unfamiliar with current brand availability. It's also associated with lower levels of involvement. Consumers practice extensive decision-making process when buying an unfamiliar expensive product or an infrequently bought item. This process is the most complex type of consumer buying decision and associated with high involvement on the part of the consumer. Buyers use several criteria for evaluating their options and spend much time seeking information. The type of decision making that the consumer uses to purchase a product does not necessarily remain consistent. If a routinely purchased product is no longer satisfying the consumer, may practice limited or extensive decision making to switch to another brand. And people who first use extensive decision-making process may then use limited or routine decision-making process for future purchases. Of all the factors that affect consumer decision-making, cultural factors exert the broadest and deepest influence. Culture is the set of values, norms, attitudes, and other meaningful symbols that shape human behavior and the artifacts or products of the behavior as they are transmitted from one generation to the next. It is the essential character of society that distinguishes it from other cultural groups. The underlying elements of every culture are the values, language, myths, customs, rituals, and laws that guide the behavior of the people. Culture is pervasive. What people eat, how they dress, what they think and feel, and what language they speak are all dimensions of culture. All things consumers do without conscious choice because their culture values, customs, and rituals are ingrained in their daily habits. Culture is a functional human interaction. It creates value and prescribes acceptable behavior for each culture. By establishing common expectation, culture gives order to society. Culture is learned. Consumers are not born knowing their values and norms of their society. They learn what is acceptable from family and friends. Children learn the values that will govern their behavior from parents, teachers, and peers. Culture is dynamic. It adapts to changing needs and evolving environment. Technology in today's world has accelerated the rate of cultural change. The most defining element of culture is the values. Recall that values can refer to an enduring belief shared by society that a specific mode of conduct is personally or socially preferable to another mode of conduct. Values also correspond to the consumption patterns. Many consumers seek out the opinions of others to reduce their search and evaluation effort or uncertainty, especially as the perceived risk of the decision increases. Consumers interact socially with reference groups, opinion leaders, and family members to obtain product information and decision approval. A reference group consists of all the formal and informal groups that influence the buying behavior of an individual. They learn from observing how members of the reference group consume, and they use the same criteria to make their own consumer decisions. The primary membership group includes all groups with which people interact regularly in an informal manner, such as family, friends, members of social media such as Facebook, and coworkers. People associate with secondary membership groups less consistently and more formally. These groups might include clubs, professional groups, and religious groups. Aspirational reference groups is a group of people that would like to join. To join an aspirational group, a person must at least conform to the norms of that group. A norm consists of the values and attitudes deemed acceptable by the group. Non-aspirational reference groups or dissociative groups influence our behaviors when we try to maintain distance from them. Reference groups are particularly powerful in influencing the clothes people wear, the cars they drive, electronics they use, activities they participate in, the foods they eat, and the luxury goods they purchase. For marketers, reference groups have three important implications. They serve as information source and influence perception. They affect an individual aspiration levels. Their norms either constrain or stimulate the consumer behavior. Opinion leaders are people who influence others. Obviously, it is important for marketing managers to persuade such people to purchase their goods or services. They are often the most influential, informed, plugged in, and vocal member of society. Opinion leadership is the casual phenomenon and is usually inconspicuous, so locating opinion leaders offline can be a challenge. On a national level, companies sometimes use movie stars, sports figures, and other celebrities to promote products, hoping they're appropriate opinion leaders. Marketers are looking into social media to find opinion leaders, but the sheer volume of posts and platform makes determining the true opinion leaders challenging. The family is the most important social institution for many consumers, strongly influencing values, attitudes, self concept, and buying behavior. The family is responsible for the socialization process, the passing down of cultural values and norms to children. Children learn by observing their parents' consumption patterns, so they tend to shop in similar patterns. Family members assume a variety of roles in the purchase process. You have the initiators that suggest, initiate, or plant the seed for the purchase process. The initiator can be any member of the family. You have the influencers that are the members of the family whose opinions are valued. The decision maker is the family member who actually makes the decision to buy or not to buy. The purchaser is the one who actually exchanges money for the product. And the consumer is the person that uses the product. Marketers should consider family purchase situations along with distribution of consumer and decision maker roles among family members. The trends to minimize family conflict: when couples agree to narrow down their options before making a purchase, they're more likely to be satisfied with the eventual outcome and less likely to feel regret. Social influences plays an important role in consumer behavior, but not all persons are equally influenced in their purchase decisions. Some have strong need to build the images others have of them by buying products used by other members of their reference groups. These individuals have a strong desire to avoid negative impressions in public settings. Consumers defer in their feelings of connectedness to other consumers. A consumer with separated self-schema perceives themselves as distinct and separate from others. A person with connected self-schema sees himself as an integral part of the group. Researchers found that individuals who feel connected respond more favorably to advertisements that promote group belonging and cohesiveness. An individual's buying decisions are further influenced by psychological factors: perception, motivation, and learning. These factors are what consumers use to interact with their world. They are tools consumers use to recognize their feelings, gather and analyze information, formulate thoughts and opinions, and take action. Psychological influences can be affected by a person's environment because they're applied on specific occasions. A stimulus is any unit input affecting one or more of the five senses: sight, smell, taste, touch, and hearing. The process by which we select, organize, interpret these stimuli into meaningful and coherent picture is called perception. Perception is how we see the world around us. We act based on our perceptions. People cannot perceive every stimuli in their environment. Therefore, they use selective exposure to decide which stimuli to notice and which to ignore. A typical consumer is exposed to nearly 3,000 advertising messages a day, but only notices about 11 to 20 of them. The familiarity of an object, contrast, movement, intensity, and smell are cues that influences perception. Consumers use these cues to identify and define products and brands. Packaged foods manufacturers use colors to trigger unconscious associations for grocery shoppers who typically make their shopping decisions in the blink of an eye. Two other concepts closely related to selective exposure are selective distortion and selective retention. Selective distortion occurs when consumers change or distort information that conflicts with their feelings or beliefs. Selective retention is remembering only information that supports personal feelings or beliefs. The consumer forgets all information that may be inconsistent. Which stimuli will be received often depends on the individual. People can be exposed to the same stimuli under identical conditions, but perceive them very differently. Marketers must recognize the importance of cues or signals in consumers' perception of products. Marketing managers first identify the important attributes such as price and quality. The targeted consumer wants in a product and then design signals to communicate these attributes. Marketers also often use price as a signal to consumers that the product is of higher quality than competing products. Consumers also associate quality with reliability with certain brands. Companies watch their brand identity closely in a large part because a strong link has been established between perceived brand value and consumer loyalty. Marketing managers are also interested in the threshold level of perception. This is the minimum difference in the stimulus that the consumer will notice. This concept is sometimes referred to as the just noticeable difference. This is how much you can drop a price before the consumer thinks it's a deal. Besides changing stimuli as price, packaging size, and volume, marketers can change the product or attempt to reposition its image. Marketing managers who intend to do business in global markets should be aware of how foreign consumers perceive their products. By studying motivation, marketers can analyze the major forces influencing consumers to buy or not to buy a product. When you buy a product, you usually do so to fulfill some kind of need. These needs become motives when they are aroused sufficiently. A motive is the drive force that causes a person to take action to satisfy a specific need. One theory is the Maslow's hierarchy of need, which arranges needs in ascending order of importance: psychological, safety, social, esteem, and self-actualization. A person fulfills one need, a higher level of need becomes more important. The most basic human need, that is, the need for food, water, and shelter, are physiological because they're essential to survival. These needs must be satisfied first. Safety needs include security and freedom from pain and discomfort. Marketers sometimes appeal to consumers' fear and anxieties about safety to sell their products. After physiological and safety needs have been fulfilled, social needs are next. This is especially love and a sense of belonging. Love includes acceptance by one's peers as well as sex and romance. Marketing managers probably appeal more to this need than to any other. Ads for clothes, cosmetics, vacation packages suggest that buying the product can bring love. Love is acceptance without regard to one's contributions. Esteem is acceptance based on one's contributions to the group. Self-esteem needs includes self-respect and a sense of accomplishment. Esteem needs also include prestige, fame, recognition of one's accomplishments. The highest human need is self-actualization. It refers to finding self-fulfillment and self-expression, reaching the point in life in which people are what they feel they should be. Maslow believed that very few people will ever attain this level. Almost all consumer behavior results from learning, which is the process that creates changes in the consumer behavior through experience and practice. There are two types of learning: experiential and conceptual. Experiential learning occurs when the experience changes your behavior. Conceptual learning, which is not acquired through direct experience but based upon reasoning, is the second type of learning. Reinforcement and repetition boost learning. Reinforcement can be positive or negative. Without a positive or negative reinforcement, a person will not be motivated to repeat the behavior pattern or to avoid it. Learning theory is helpful in reminding marketers that concrete and timely strategies are what reinforce desired consumer behavior. Repetition is key strategy in promotional campaigns because it can lead to increased learning. Most marketers use repetitious advertising so that consumers will learn that their unique advantage is over the competition. Generally, to heighten learning, advertising messages should be spread out over time rather than clustered together. Stimulus recognition occurs when one response is extended to a second stimulus similar to the first. Marketers often use a successful, well-known brand name for a family of products because it gives consumers familiarity and knowledge about each product in the family. Stimulus discrimination means learning to differentiate among similar products. Consumers may perceive one product as more rewarding or stimulating, even if it's virtually indistinguishable from the competitors. Some types of products, marketers rely on promotion to point out brand differences that consumers would otherwise not recognize. This process is called product differentiation. Thank you everyone for listening to this lecture, and I hope you have a wonderful day.